bunkers down from the storm.
This is going to be a big and powerful storm.
It's a very unique weather event.
We should plan to see heavy rain that lasts for 36 hours.
I wonder what would happen if the other team were in charge.
Every time you have an occasion to take something from the federal government and send it back to the states, that's the right direction. And if you can go even further and send it back to the private sector, that's even better.
When there is a disaster, there's an appropriate federal role. And we will find the monies, but we've had discussions about these things before, and those monies will be offset with appropriate savings or cost cutting elsewhere.
President Obama promised to begin to slow the rise of the oceans. I'm not familiar precisely with exactly what I said, but I stand by what I said, whatever it was.
Before Obama got in, the Smithsonian couldn't mention global warming as a possible reason the glaciers were shrinking. Heat, melting ice, was just a theory.
This is a serious and big storm.
Don't be stupid. Get out.
Biggest question with Sandy is exactly where and how much damages are we going to see?
I turned out to be right. You turned out to be dead. That's not a great equation.
We're going to cut through red tape.
Some people in the country are a little nervous about a storm.
Governor Romney says he believes in climate change, but he says he's not sure that man-made causes are the reason.
President Obama promised to begin to slow the rise of the oceans.
I believe scientists.
Sandy could wind up being the October surprise.
I've got to get back to D.C. because the storm...
Every time you have an occasion to take something from the federal government and send it back to the states, that's the right direction. And if you can go even further and send it back to the private sector, that's even better.
Does it show a sign of disarray or discontent within the Obama re-election campaign that he comes down here, doesn't do anything, and just flies back?
I am not worried at this point about the impact on the election.
You with full hearts and clear eyes can see what's happening across the country right now. And on the eastern coast of our nation, a lot of people are enduring some very difficult times.
The election will take care of itself next week. Right now, our number one priority is to make sure that we are saving lives.
We're counting on Ohio. I know the people of the Atlantic coast are counting on Ohio and the rest of our states, but I also think the people of the entire nation are counting on Ohio. If Ohio votes me in as president, I'll be the next president of the United States.
When you elect Mitt, you're not just electing him, you're electing every right-wing nut he's pandered to in the last 10 years.
Let's get right to our panel now. We're joined by my colleague, Steve Kornacki, co-host of The Cycle. And
this was a devastating storm, maybe the worst that we have ever experienced.
I am not worried at this point about the impact on the election. I'm worried about the impact on families.
I have confidence in the fact that we'll have complete support from the President of the United States.
The people of Ohio have big hearts, so we're expecting you to follow through and help out.
The President has been all over this, and he deserves great credit. I've been on the phone with him, like I said, yesterday personally 3 times.
I want to thank all the first responders throughout this country.
This looks like another time when we need to come together all across the country, even here in Ohio.
The election will take care of itself next week. Right now, our number one priority is to make sure that we are saving lives. Message to the federal government. No bureaucracy, no red tape. Get resources where they're needed as fast as possible, as hard as possible, and for the duration.
A lot of people hurting this morning. They were hurting last night, and the storm goes on. I've had the chance to speak with some of the governors in the affected areas, and they've talked about a lot of people having a hard time. You can't always solve all the problems yourself, but you can make the difference in the life of 1 or 2 people as a result of 1 or 2 people taking an effort.
From Sandy's lab.
The good news is we will clean up and we will get through this.
We have heavy hearts, as you know, with all the suffering going on in a major part of our country.
Our concern is primary life safety, and then we'll start getting to the critical infrastructure.
We're in the middle of Hurricane Sandy, and we have no studio audience.
President Obama said that Americans should take warnings about Hurricane Sandy seriously. Step 1, give it a name other than Sandy.
I mean, Sandy, you're like Frankenstein, right? I can't believe this.
We felt like we would be putting the audience at jeopardy if they had to sit through the show. And I said, hell, we've been doing that for 30 years.
He called me, he said, I got to go back right now. This storm's getting out of hand. I got to handle it. And I said, Mr. President, that is the right call. He's doing the job a president should be doing.
The storm goes on. I've had the chance to speak with some of the governors in the affected areas.
FEMA's about to run out of money, and there are some people who say the states should take on more of this role. How do you deal with something like that?
If you can go even further and send it back to the private sector, that's even better.
In the final jobs report before the election.
Would there be any incentive to not release this? Thank you for the laugh amongst all this devastation. I mean, it just comes top of mind.
I am not worried at this point about the impact on the election.
The president has been outstanding in this. I spoke to him 3 times yesterday. I said if you could expedite the major disaster declaration without all the normal FEMA mumbo-jumbo. The president has been all over this, and he deserves great credit. Not once did he bring up the election. So if he's not bringing it up, you can be sure that people in New Jersey are not worried about that. I don't give a damn about Election Day. I've got much bigger fish to fry.
The election will take care of itself next week.
Let's get right.
You know, Obama campaign officials have said that there's been up to, 15% more early turnout by Latinos since they opened in Florida. So it's definitely a big, big number, and it's...
Tiny number.
Those are the ones, that's what they want to see. They want to see a system that works. And when you have, frankly, someone who is brash and outspoken and conservative working with a president who's supposed to be polarizing, you've got Christie and Obama working together with a single focus, I think it actually encourages people about politics, about government, and about these two individuals, because it does take leaders, it does take individuals. Full credit to the 2 men involved.
Yeah. Mitt Romney, although refusing to answer personal questions of any kind, 3-week anniversary today from the last time he answered a question, he has now issued a statement supporting FEMA. He says, I'm quoting, "As president, I will ensure FEMA has the funding it needs to fulfill its mission." So once again, here's Mitt Romney. Finger in the air, wind blowing, oh, it's a heavy storm, I support FEMA.
Yeah. Well, it only took him 48 hours.
This is embarrassing.
It only took him 48 hours to come up with a statement. You would hope that President Romney could respond to a hurricane quicker than he can come up with a statement about his position on FEMA.
He could not be nominated as the Republican for president in 2012 if he continued to espouse those beliefs. And
why? Why could he not? Why could he not?
You know, Nancy Pelosi created a select committee on energy independence and global warming as soon as we took over the Congress in 2007. And she did so in order to ensure that, one, we backed out imported oil, and one of the first things we did was pass legislation to improve fuel economy standards to 55 miles per gallon by the year 2026 and back out all the oil which we import from the Persian Gulf and 6 billion metric tons of CO2 per year. The President Romney and the Republicans are pledging to repeal those standards. And we also dramatically increased the funding for wind and for solar and for other clean energy technologies, which they also are saying that they no longer want to fund, while keeping the tax breaks for oil on the books. And so the first thing they did as soon as they took over in 2011 was abolish the Select Committee on Energy Independence and Global Warming, and then have a vote on the House floor that called for a repeal of climate science, like they would repeal the law of gravity or the law of science that said the Earth revolves around the moon, except the...
Thank you and good afternoon. It's Thursday, November the 1st. Mean old Mitt is back on the trail. Five days to go, and the pace is fast and furious.
I was a leader in the Boy Scouts of America some years ago.
No, faster than that.
You know I'll fight for you and your families every single day as hard as I know how. You know that.
If I'm reelected, if I'm elected...
We've come too far to turn back now.
We need you, Virginia. We've got to take back America.
Together we'll renew those bonds and reaffirm that spirit. that makes the United States of America the greatest nation on earth. Thank you, Wisconsin.
While full fury abounds about two politicians helping millions.
Is it possible Obama called Christie and said, "You want some money? You want some? You better let me come"?
I cannot thank the president enough for his personal concern.
Barack Obama stole Mitt's date to disaster prom. He was clearly there for the canned goods.
We're going to box these things up in just a minute and put them on some trucks, and then we're going to send them into, I think it's New Jersey.
Boy, that really warms my, I think it's my heart.
If you really want to see what's driving the far right to distraction at this moment in the election campaign, then take a look at this.
I cannot thank the president enough for his personal concern and compassion for our state and for the people of our state.
I just want to thank him for his extraordinary leadership and partnership.
Yes, you saw it with your own eyes there, a Republican and a Democrat coming together during a national disaster. Absolutely disgraceful, says the far right. But as always, they have an unskewed explanation for what they cannot comprehend.
Governor Christie said, "Bring money. Just show up and bring money. I need money. My state's in terrible shape. I need money, so come and bring money. I'll be glad to stand with you. I don't care about the election." He said that. This election is not important right now.
Joining us here in New York is Jonathan Alter, a Bloomberg View columnist.
You know, the needs of New Jersey and New York at this point are of no consequence to him. Otherwise, he would say, well, you know, it's nice to see them working together. But he's so determined to you know, help Romney win this election that he actually engaged in, maybe he was joking, but a little bit of gay baiting. If you listen to the full broadcast today, where, you know, he said this was man-loving man, and going heavily with the love metaphors between the two politicians. But
It's just marvelous to have folks in the entertainment community who are out there singing and performing to make sure people are coming and listening to our message.
Heck of a job, Brownie.
I've instituted a 15-minute rule. You return everybody's phone calls in 15 minutes.
We want to make sure that they have a speedy and quick recovery from their financial and, in many cases, personal loss.
How long you had the Marina?
Since 1996.
1996.
I cannot thank the president enough.
Governor Christie has been responsive. He's been aggressive.
Is it wrong for one man to love another man?
Christie kicked crazy.
Good thing his mom sewed his name into all of his clothes.
Somebody actually put into the sand the letters R-O-M-N-E-Y.
Why? Because they love him.
The differences between the two men are very dramatic, and without a doubt, only one of them is a leader.
I'm the guy who does his job. You must be the other guy.
He scrapped his victory rally in Kettering, Ohio, and instead appeared at a completely different, the same spot, and called it a storm relief rally.
Michael Brown, who is in charge of FEMA, is actually criticizing President Obama for responding to Hurricane Sandy too quickly.
Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job.
Brown would have said more, but he was still busy responding to Katrina.
In a Romney administration, you'll be rescued by private sector volunteers like Paul Ryan, who will personally come to your devastated town and wash your already clean pots.
We will go trick-or-treating on the same route I went on when I was a little guy.
I usually put a condom over my head and go out as a... well, never mind.
He's not going to get any of your votes.
The far left is threatening violence if President Obama loses the election.
Only if he was on Survivor and we voted him off the island.
5 more days. 5 more days.
Together we'll renew those bonds and reaffirm that spirit that makes the United States of America the greatest nation on earth.
Let's get right to days to go before voters hit the polls, and we're about to be carpet bombed with a sustained blitz of political advertising. NBC News reports that the total ad spending in the presidential race is about to hit $1 billion. And in this week alone, both campaigns, plus all the outside interest groups, are spending $143 million. That's more than both Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush raised for their entire presidential campaigns 20 years ago. We're joined now by Bill Cohen, who's a columnist, the author of Money and Power, How Goldman Sachs Came to Rule the World. What do you make of the amount of money that's being spent, but specifically the so-called social welfare organizations who are completely unaccountable and completely unidentifiable because nobody knows who they are. They've spent millions of dollars, and 83% of the spending has been used to attack Democrats.
Well, once again, it's the lack of accountability that we see across government. We see it across Wall Street. I mean, to be able to spend that kind of money targeting your message against Democrats and not know who's behind it, I don't think is doing our democracy any good. And I think, you know, once we get through this election cycle, I think that's one thing that we need to take a new look at and see if we can possibly change that. You know, there was that incredibly good program on Frontline the other day by Kai Ryssdal examining this very thing, and it was mind-boggling the money that they used without any accountability to get rid of candidates in local provinces like in Montana.
Michael Shearer, who's written for Time magazine this week, says that $800 million has been spent by outside groups, and the vast majority of this is untraceable.
Right, and again, but you know, Martin, I think the thing to think about is that there's huge sums of money are being spent, but it doesn't always mean that the people who are spending it get their message across. Just because you're spending all this kind of money doesn't necessarily mean it works. Now, you know, we saw that the former CEO of eBay, Meg Whitman, in California, spent $125 million of her own fortune. And it didn't work. She lost the governorship to Jerry Brown, who obviously spent a lot less. So just because you're spending this money doesn't mean that you're persuading voters to your point of view.
Okay, well, to your point, we have an ad which is from Americans for Prosperity, which imagines a future world in which China dominates the United States. It's a pretty ugly
Powerful ad. Yeah.
But it's ugly, isn't it?
Yes.
But it's also dumb, because if you look at the front page of the New York Times today, there's a story which says that all the highly skilled people in China are actually leaving to go elsewhere. So it seems like a dumb ad in the light of that analysis.
Well, it's plus to offend your largest creditor, which clearly it's offensive as well, and borderline racist.
Yeah, a bit of xenophobia never hurt some of these organizations.
But you know, when there's no reason to offend your largest creditor. We need to work with people all over the world. We need to work with the Chinese. We need to work with the Japanese. We need to work with all the people who are financing our massive debt and not offend them in any way.
Many of our viewers who know you because of your writings and know that you've spent a considerable time in Wall Street want to know what the 1% have against this president, given that he appears to have done very little to upset the apple cart.
I mean, honestly, Martin, this has me scratching my head. Aside from calling them...
It has you scratching your head.
It has me scratching my head. You know, aside from calling them once upon a time fat cat bankers, President Obama has done more for Wall Street than almost any other president I can imagine in recent years. Look, there's been no prosecutions of anybody on Wall Street for what happened.
Not one criminal prosecution.
Not one. The stock market has doubled since March of 2009. He's bailed out the banks, which is tantamount to providing bankers and traders with huge billion-dollar bonuses. And he's, you know, encouraged a Fed policy, which is low interest rates, which hurts savers, and has floated every boat on Wall Street for years now. So they should be thanking him, and instead they criticize him.
If Bill Cohen doesn't get it, no one does. Bill Cohen, thank you, sir. Next, new jobs numbers look encouraging.
We're going to create 12 million new jobs. I have a plan that'll create 12 million new jobs. We're going to create 12 million new jobs in just 4 years.
Of course, those 12 million jobs come with 12 million magic wands attached. Joining us now is Robert Reich, Professor of Economics at the University of California in Berkeley and a former Labour Secretary and the author of the best-selling e-book Beyond Outrage. Welcome, sir. Professor Reich, Romney is not creating 12 million new jobs. He's taking credit for 12 million jobs that one research firm believes will be automatically created over the next 4 years. Is that not the truth?
Martin, you know, I'm surprised that Mitt Romney didn't say 14 million or 18 million
That's
or 22
true, actually.
million. I mean, he picked the number completely out of a hat. The United States economy, on a normal year, will create, and again, this is not a normal year right now, but in a normal year, when the economy is going at a kind of normal pace, we'll create about 2 million new jobs. Given that we are in a recovery and the recovery is picking up some speed, it's possible that we may get up to 2 2.5 or even 3 million new jobs per year. So Mitt Romney's claim of 12 million new jobs in 4 years may automatically happen regardless of who is president. This is a kind of claim that is baseless in terms of public policy. Mitt Romney is not coming up with any policies that are going to generate 12 million new jobs. In fact, if anything, Mitt Romney's policies of giving a huge tax break to the very, very wealthy, cutting most of the programs that everybody else depends on, turning Medicare into a voucher system, all of these things actually may depress consumer confidence, reduce aggregate demand, and actually slow the economy down.
President Obama promised to begin to slow the rise of the oceans. And to heal the planet.
You try telling that dismal joke to those who've just watched the sea rise over their homes and communities. You try denying the fact that the number of storms each year is increasing, not just in number, but in ferocity too. And when up to 80 people lose their lives as a direct result of a storm like this, is the rise of the oceans a joke, or is it a serious moral problem? I think we know the answer to that question, even if climate change remains outside of Mitt Romney's selective morality.
Time is short.
I can tell this kind of a rowdy crowd.
All in all, guys, a better-than-expected jobs report.
Pretty solid report.
This is a great report.
This guy had a lot of coffee this morning.
And desperate times called for desperate measures from Mitt Romney.
Sold Chrysler to Italians who are going to build Jeeps in China.
It's not true. Everybody knows it's not true. But you don't scare hardworking Americans just to scare up some votes. That's not what being president's all about.
Soy Mitt Romney y apruebo este mensaje.
Ohio, I'm not ready to give up on the fight.
I don't know how closely you're watching the president's campaign. My guess is you're not seeing a lot of MSNBC, but if you... I'm not familiar precisely with exactly what I said, but I stand by what I said, whatever it was.
For misleading voters with egregious and desperate claims that Chrysler is moving Jeep production to China.
It's not true. Everybody knows it's not true. The car companies themselves had told Governor Romney to knock it off. You don't scare hardworking Americans just to scare up some votes. That's not what being president's all about.
No, it isn't what being president is all about, but it is what the Romney campaign is all about, as he demonstrated today in Wisconsin, trading rolled-up sleeves for his salesman's suit and warning voters that a vote for the president could mean another recession, among other horrors.
The same path we're on means $20 trillion in debt in 4 years. It means crippling unemployment continues. It means stagnant take-home pay, depressed home values, and a devastated military. And unless we change course, we may well be looking at another recession.
Yes, I guess someone told Mr. Romney it's the Day of the Dead. All he's missing there are a few skeletons as stage props. But hang on, what about those jobs numbers showing persistent economic growth? The report today showing employers added 171,000 jobs in October, more than expected. What about the revisions upward of jobs gained in August and September? Never mind. Let's go to a key Romney supporter for his take.
Hello, everyone. I have to say that despite those unimaginably horrible good job numbers, we're feeling pretty confident.
Yes, while Romney did not get the endorsement of Mayor Michael Bloomberg, he did get the backing of one Montgomery Burns, and a confident endorsement at that.
There's only one thing that might deny us the presidency that is the God-given property of the Republican Party.
The 47% tape?
Nope.
The empty chair?
Nope.
Cayman Islands?
Not a problem.
Swiss bank accounts? $10,000 bet? I like to fire people? Forcible haircut? The tax returns that Wesley Snipes would call suspicious?
No, 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 and no.
No, none of that. It'll probably just be let Detroit go bankrupt after all. And before we
Don't be stupid. Get out.
Take this very seriously.
Some people in the country are a little nervous about a storm.
I am not worried at this point about the impact on the election.
The president has been outstanding.
A speedy and quick recovery from their financial and, in many cases, personal loss.
Is there any possibility that Governor Romney may go to New Jersey?
I have no idea, nor am I the least bit concerned or interested.
I've instituted a 15-minute rule. You return everybody's phone calls in 15 minutes.
I cannot thank the president enough.
Governor Christie, he's been aggressive.
Is it wrong for one man to love another man?
Sandy could wind up being the October surprise.
Before Obama got in, the Smithsonian couldn't mention global warming. Heat, melting ice was just a theory.
Governor Romney says he believes in climate change, but he says he's not sure that man-made causes are the reason.
President Obama promised to begin to slow the rise of the oceans.
I believe scientists.
That's what caused this monster storm! You said 14 times today what you do with FEMA.
You can go even further and send it back to the private sector. That's even better.
Michael Brown, who is in charge of FEMA, is actually criticizing President Obama.
Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job.
Brown would have said more, but he was still busy responding to Katrina.
Garbage, crap, and nonsense. The far left is threatening violence if President Obama loses.
You're watching Fox. You're hearing about it.
State Department, the CIA, does nothing. You are misleading the American people because you want to make a political
in the area.
At least we don't live in swing state.
Jeep, now owned by the Italians, is thinking of moving all production to China.
The biggest load of bull in the world.
Why do you say these things to Mitt Romney?
Joe Biden is using his teeth to illuminate Hoboken.
Single and looking to mingle? Find that special someone on the early voting line.
Our destiny is in the hands of the American people.
I'll fight for you and your families every single day, as hard as I know how.
Let's not freak out over Hurricane Sandy and think we need the feds. The response should simply be handled by whatever individual state is the entire eastern seaboard.
Mitt Romney's view that about where they would come out. Well, we now have them, 171,000 new jobs. That's 25 consecutive months of job growth, almost 5.5 million under this president. Your reaction to that figure?
We're marching in the right direction, and particularly when you put it in the perspective of what he walked into. When President Obama was first elected, this country was shedding over 750,000 jobs a month. And because of his economic policies, we've been digging our way out of that deep red hole and providing more jobs for people and moving in the right direction.
Now, going back for a moment to the disaster that's happened this week and the storm, Mitt Romney has not answered a single question from any reporters for 23 days. Would that be because he would have abolished FEMA if he had the power to do so, and that now places him in a somewhat difficult position given what has happened?
Absolutely, because the first question would be, Governor, you are obviously wrong. FEMA is doing an excellent job. FEMA is reacting to 17 states that were hit by this terrible storm. And at one time, Martin, the storm was hitting both Bermuda and the great state of North Carolina at the same time. And not only was the federal response and reaction to it and protection of people, and the first responsibility of government is to protect our people, save lives, and but the response, the recovery needs to be coordinated too.
But he says give it back to the states. Well, even the private sector can deal with it.
Well, he's obviously wrong. That's why he's not answering the questions. And furthermore, he chose as his running mate Congressman Ryan, who has proposed to cut FEMA by 43%. Tell that to the lines of people who are lined up to get water and food today and yesterday. I was spending time with them. These high rises, we have volunteers running up and down taking water and food to many people that are seniors and bound to their homes. And I thought the timing of campaigning today with Eric Cantor in Virginia. Virginia is hard hit too. And Eric Cantor also advocated that there should not be one federal dollar spent for FEMA unless there was an offset where you cut what, Medicare, Medicaid, what are you going to cut to account for any expenditure? And FEMA is saving lives. Not only are they saving lives in this recovery with food and water and batteries and blankets, but the recovery. They have loans to help people get back on their feet. These small businesses that have lost all their produce, all their inventory, all their food. They don't even have the money to restock. It'll give them a bridge loan, guarantee a bridge loan with a bank. So it's a very important agency.
I'm delighted that you've mentioned the great Eric Cantor, because he was out campaigning, as you said. And let's listen to what he said.
This country is in desperate need of a leader who understands, first of all, that reasonable people can disagree. That's what this country is built upon, is a spirit of cooperation, of understanding.
Mr. Cantor has spent the last 4 years opposing absolutely everything that this president has tried to do to stir the recovery.
Absolutely.
You know this man.
Absolutely.
What is he talking about? He talks about cooperation, a spirit of understanding. Have you ever seen Eric Cantor deliver that over the last 4 years?
We have not, and I hope he will deliver it over the next 4 years. They spent the last 4 years trying to discredit and stop President Obama and absolutely everything he tried to do to help people. They thwarted his jobs program. They thwarted many of his initiatives, and I'm all for bipartisanship. We need to get back to work and avert the fiscal cliff. We need to work together to get people back to work and get this economy moving in an even stronger way. But based on history, they were not cooperative, and if anything, they stopped every single jobs-related economic development effort of the president.
Can I ask you about the New York Marathon? Because everybody everywhere is arguing about whether it should go ahead this weekend. We know that it raises a great deal of revenue and brings
fast enough, which is actually, I think, true. I mean, I'd actually give him one of the talking points you took. It's true that people rejoin the labor force this month, but a lot of them have dropped out of it since 4 years ago. The problem with the talking point, and it's a problem with all of Romney's talking points, is that the entire economy is not about President Obama. I mean, for a guy who supposedly doesn't believe in government, Romney does appear to believe the president has sort of magic definitive powers about
that is the central irony of this man's claim, isn't it?
A couple of years ago when
unemployment continues. I know that when I'm elected, the economy and the American job market will still be stagnant.